Welcome to Pain with a Purpose, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of resilience, redemption, and purpose. I'm your host, Chris Woods, and each week we will sit down with guests who have faced challenges with substance abuse, mental health, and recovery. But we're not just dwelling on the past. Instead, we'll explore what keeps them driven towards a purposeful life. Join us as we navigate the journey from pain to a purpose. Welcome back to Pain with a Purpose, Season 1, Episode 17. Dillon, Sullivan.
How we doing?
Good, man. I'm out of breath still. We
Same.
ran up here because, I don't know, it's Labor Day. Appreciate you coming out on, a day that we're not working.
Absolutely.
Not that this is really work, but, you could have just been sitting on the couch where I would like to be right now. But by all means, dude, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this by episode 17.
We'll see. Who knows? Who knows? So where are we going to start with you? I have a bunch of ideas of where I want to go with it. I think first and foremost, right? September is recovery month. And if anybody is watching or listening to this, they probably have seen your Facebook or Instagram from years back.
Yeah, long time
and if
ago.
you want to talk about this thing working, Dillon Sullivan is a point proven fact of that.
Appreciate that.
Walk me through that, right? So I know that we both got sober in Bucks County, Levittown, and it's not where I'm from. So when they said I was going there, I was like, where's that? But walk me through that because I feel like my experience and your experience, although similar, was very much different.
Yeah. So I grew up in Flowertown. It's Springfield, Montgomery County. Everyone mixes up with Delco.
The real Springfield.
The real Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I grew up in a great family. I mean, I've, two older sisters that are twins, which we've talked about because you had your twins, an older brother as well. And I'm the youngest of four. So, I mean, good household, good things growing up. Parents are in my life. They're supportive. I mean, my family was great. So I think the first time that I ever used is probably 8th grade. Smoked weed. I think we rolled up a brown paper bag in the creek with some kid from Orland, right?
Yep.
And it didn't just start off to the races there, right? I mean, it started off pretty slow, but I do remember, growing up, I always felt out of place. Even though I connected with everybody, maybe I was one of the popular kids, right? But I always just didn't feel good in my own body. All the way through grade school, into high school. And, long story short, as time went on, I ended up in Levittown. You probably got up there right before me.
Probably the first time. I didn't stay sober the first time I went up there.
Either did I.
If we backtrack a little bit, right? Because I think it's a really good point for, people to hear if there is anybody listening that might be still has that idea of what someone that's struggling with drinking and drugging might look or sound like. And for all things considered, right? It was not you, your family or anything. It doesn't happen over there, right? You went to LaSalle, right?
I went to LaSalle, yeah, for high school.
So it was being from Roman, right? And I actually went to Norwood Fontbonne, and then I got asked to leave. But that's where I'm sure my mom wanted me to go, right? Or Chestnut Hill or something like that. And it was that was the roadmap of what my family wanted from me. And people that went to those schools never struggled the way that we eventually did. So it's a really good point that it's this thing does not discriminate, right? It doesn't matter if you grew up in, a dirt poor situation or a very well off, not saying that was your case, but middle class, whatever. It does not discriminate one way or the other.
Yeah. And high school, I think, is where things really took off. I mean, it starts, at least for me, it kind of started with stealing a couple beers out of the fridge, right? Hanging out with your friends on the weekend, maybe making a water bottle of vodka, right? Those little things. And eventually, that turned into, again, it was very slow in the beginning, right? But I think sophomore year of high school, that's the first time I ever did a perk, right? And it was a perk 10, one of those yellow buses. I think I got it off somebody in Mount Airy from what I remember. And I'll always remember the feeling I had as soon as I took that. I felt my entire life flashed before my eyes. I instantly felt better. It's interesting physically. I think I threw up. But I know, like, mentally, emotionally, I finally felt alive. Like I was saying before, I always felt out of place. I didn't feel like I belonged in certain situations. And that all just went away immediately, right? From that point on. And ever since that first time I did it, I was just chasing that feeling, right? Over and over and over again. I think through high school, I played sports all my life. I played lacrosse at LaSalle. Ended up quitting, ironically, after sophomore year, probably because I started using, right, more aggressively. And, high school for me was, I graduated with a high GPA, right? I did really well in school. I didn't try, I didn't apply myself, but I did well in school. And, towards senior year of high school, I was doing perk 30s every day, like daily. I couldn't get through a day without it, right? And somehow I managed to graduate. Again, not like top of my class or anything, but I did well, and I got into Penn State University, right? Which is, it's a competitive school. It's hard to get into. And I went up there, and I feel like during high school, grade school, all those sort of things, I was always trying to please everybody and like almost manipulating in a way where like, hey, everything seems fine, right? He plays sports, grades are good, he's, accountable, all those sort of things. But deep down, like, I'm always getting high, I'm always drinking, I'm having fun on the weekends, those sort of things. And I think high school, even though I was using every day in, senior year of high school, I think I wasn't a full blown addict yet. I don't think I was. I was still having fun with it. I was still having a good time. Like I said, partying with friends and things like that. And I know I definitely got into some trouble here and there in high school. There was a time I'd broken into somebody's house, stole a bunch of things, got caught for that. Right. There was other times where, pulled over,
in Springfield.
Yeah.
And they don't play.
No,
they don't care who your family is. They do not play.
They don't play. I got pulled over right by Philly Cricket Country Club. It's actually a funny story. So I used to caddy there. That's what I did my entire life. I was a golf caddy. Started when I was like 11 years old, right? So I was working at Philly Cricket, and I was with a kid from LaSalle. Got all drunk, got high, whatever. We were driving around. Decided to go destroy the golf course, like break pins and rakes and mess the green. Philly Cricket's a nice course, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You're getting charged, brother.
Yeah. So we messed the course up. We get pulled over by a cop going home. The cop lets us go, but the next morning, golf course is destroyed. Cop pulled 2 kids over. They put 2 and 2 together, right? So the next morning, I show up to work after I did what I just did. I caddy for the head golf pro, which is hilarious, right? Of course. Like, and I never, at that time, the way caddying worked is like, if you're, a younger kid in like high school and stuff like that, you get like the later groups, so like 11, 12. I was like 7 a.m., right? I'm first out, the head pro. I'm like, what is going on? My friend texts me while I'm on the golf course, and he's like, yo, why'd you snitch? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the cops came to my house. They said that you told them everything. I was like, buddy, I'm at work. I didn't tell them nothing,
They got you, bud.
So I get done caddying. The head pro's like, we know what you did, blah, blah, blah. We're pressing charges. He paid me, which was surprising, right? I thought was nice. But yeah, I got booked on some like stupid stuff, But again, high school was a good experience at LaSalle. And I think on the outside, I looked like, hey, he's an athlete. He's a good kid, comes from a good family, graduated from LaSalle High School, going to Penn State. Like, on the outside, I think everything seems great. On the inside, I'm dying. You know what I mean? Like, very slowly dying. So, as time went on, getting up to Penn State, my sister went there. So I already had experience up there. My brother was already there. And fall semester, I joined a fraternity, right, with my brother. So being at Penn State, you get the parents out of the scene. Nobody's bothering you. You got rich kids everywhere, right? Like, it was a free for all for me to just, my disease to grow and grow and grow, right? From the drinking every day, from getting high every day, from selling, like the whole 9. That was just a complete party. And I never went to a single class at Penn State. Like, I never walked into a single classroom. I just partied the entire time.
Sounds like a lot of Penn State, but like, family was probably really proud of you at the time.
Yeah.
When did they find out though?
So I got which I was surprised. My report card came back halfway through the semester, and I had all Fs, obviously, right? And I'm
surprised you even got it, like, even that.
Yeah, I can't believe my parents sent me back. Like, they let me go back. I'm like, hey, I'll turn it around. I don't know what happened. I was joining the fraternity. I just made stuff up, right? And it goes back to like, I was always manipulating, right? I was always trying to make people seem like, hey, I had it all figured out, but I didn't, right? So they sent me back, completely failed out again, and just came home.
Just never went back. Yeah.
Never went back. I mean, I think they kicked me out. I don't think they wanted me back, right? I mean, I failed for 2 straight semesters, so
yeah, you probably don't. I mean, if we were to look at it right now, you probably have no credits unless you went to college afterwards. But like, you know what I mean? Like, you have nothing from Penn State.
I went to Montgomery County twice, but I have no credits at Penn State. Yeah. It's probably like I was never there. You know, I was just going through life, partying, having a good time.
Which is wild, right? Because like, you know, it sounds like a bunch of bad shit, but like in the day to day, it was probably a blast,
dude.
You know, like I don't want it to like ever sound like sure, we went through a lot of pain to get here, right? But like in the moment, we were living our best life.
Dude, I'll say Penn State was the greatest year of my life. You know what I mean? I didn't have to worry about anything. Like, your rent is paid for by your parents, and you're just partying and having a good time.
And you could go to the calf, right?
Yeah,
so
dude,
like you had food.
I had a food minimum of like $1,200, dude. I was buying Wendy's and Panda. I wasn't eating at the actual cafeteria. I had like the good stuff, you know? It was a great year. But again, I think I remember each morning waking up at Penn State just like, this is bad. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, everything's
like the impending doom. Like, eventually this is going to stop.
It's going to catch up to me. Do? Like, I can't keep getting away with this. I got through it all through high school and got away with it, right? Now I'm at college, I'm getting away with it. And at some point, like, it's going to catch up to me, and I'm going to have to figure out a way through that. Right.
Mm.
So after Penn State, I get home. My parents, my dad was, very successful in his career. I think they definitely wanted me to go to college, right, and graduate from college. I had 2 sisters that graduated that were, straight A students pretty much all the way through college. My brother was at Penn State and doing well. So I went to Montgomery County, and again, same thing, just like never went to a class, continued to get high. Now I'm around, back home in Springfield, right, with kids that I used to get high with. So I'm just doing the same thing. And it's just, at that point, I was just stuck in a revolving cycle of just like hiding everything from everyone and getting high as much as I could.
Yeah.
At some point, I think the first time I went to treatment was, I think it was like February 2014 or something like that. So I was probably 18, 19. I was probably 19 years old. I robbed a friend. Was what happened. I was getting high with this kid. I was working at UPS, I think, just loading boxes into trailers, making like $300 a week. So he went to sleep. I took his debit card, went to a Wawa, put his birthday in. That was the PIN. Emptied his bank account, went and got high, right? Did my thing. Next day, it's obvious it's me, right? I was the only one with him, all that sort of stuff. So his mom worked at the bank. They're pulling security footage, all that sort of stuff. So I didn't see a way out. So I finally went to my mom and I was like, listen, I have a problem, like I can't stop getting high. I need help. I need to figure out like something. And by the way, can you pay this kid? Cause like we got problems, you know? And, my mom was very supportive. And I think, as much as I thought I was hiding everything from everybody, they knew, you know what I mean? Like I remember my dad was like, finally, you know what I mean? Like, finally, we're going to do something about this. It's been a couple years of like going through hell with you,
Yeah.
So my mom called my Aunt Katie, who was on the podcast. She helped me get in the treatment. And I probably left 4 or 5 days in, came home. And again, like, my disease was talking, right? I'm talking to my parents like, I don't fit in. Like, they're all using heavy drugs. I don't do that, right? Like, they're not my type of people. You should have seen the place. I'm making all the excuses in the world, right? To like get by my parents.
Where'd you go to treatment that time?
Malvern.
Yeah.
Yeah, Malvern Willow Grove. And it was a great place, right? There was nothing wrong with it. It was me that was the problem, So after that, again, that cycle just continued, right? And I still caddied on the golf course, right? And I'll always say, caddying might be the greatest job for a drug addict.
It's cash every day. It's good money every day.
You go to work 6 days a week. You make $140 to $100 or $200 cash every day. You could do 2 loops if you wanted to, make $400.
So I never even made it to the caddy side. I was just in the bag room, dude, and I was still doing okay, And I was at like, I don't want to say the course, but like, it wasn't like a prominent course where like people were like really throwing money around, but still, it was still cash every day. I was able to like literally just do what I had to do. And like, somehow string along whatever I had to do at the time to like get one more, right? And like it was, then I found bartending, then I found all this other stuff, right? But like I couldn't imagine like what I would have turned into much quicker than if I was a caddy.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you're done work at 1:00 in the afternoon with $200 cash in your pocket, right?
Yep.
Like, and you're doing that 6 days a week, and especially a full time caddy. I mean, I'm making $1,200 in cash a week. Like, I was doing well, So my disease picked up, right? I began using heavier stuff, right? Started using heroin, things like that, just snorting it. And that cycle just continued. At some point, my parents held like I guess you could call it an intervention, right? Came in the house. They're all sitting there. They're, saying they love me, need to get help. And I remember sitting there on the chair in the living room, and I'm like, I can't wait for this to be over. Like, I just let them go, but I already knew what my decision was. And it was like, I'm out, dude. I'm not going to treatment again, right?
Yeah.
So my parents kind of held their ground. They're like, listen, if you're not going to get treatment, you got to get out, right? So kicked me out of the house. And I remember walking. I mean, I walked all the way from Springfield to Mount Airy, hopped on a bus to get down the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, dude, it was like a 5-mile, it was a long walk. And I remember that whole time walking, like, I was like, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's how sick I was, like, hey, this is fine. Like, I'll be great. Now I don't have to worry about all this extra stuff. I can just do my thing. I'm riding a bike all the way up to Huntington Valley, you know what I mean? And then hopping on a bus to get back down the way every day.
Yeah.
Eventually, I couldn't do it anymore. Went back to treatment. I think I went to Malvern King Road that time. I was a big Malvern guy. I love Malvern.
I think we all were back then.
It's a great place, dude. Got up there, I stayed the whole time. I still didn't feel like I was ready yet. I still didn't feel like I belonged. I wasn't big on the whole AA thing, sharing my feelings, you know what I mean? Being vulnerable. I didn't like all that stuff yet, but I finished, and I thought I was just going to do the same thing, go home, right? And start it all over again. My parents are like, nope, you're not going home this time. And that's basically how I ended up in Levittown.
Somebody got a hold of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it Aunt Katie?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
But, whether you stayed sober or not, like, eventually, like, fast tracked, like, the whole process of, like, saving our lives,
Yeah.
So I didn't have that experience. So, like, I had, like, went to treatment at this time. This is, like, probably my 8th, 9th time, like, going into treatment. And I was like, Mom, I can't keep doing this to you. Like, I don't know, like, why, but, like, I can't come home as much as, like, I don't know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to pay for this rent, but, like, I can't come home, right? So, like, I was able to go home. I went to Levittown, and I didn't stay sober, the first time I went, but it was, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just got to a point where I was, like, this cycle just continued and continued and continued, and it was, like, I was just like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I would come home, I would stay sober for, like, a number of months. I would, like, it was so weird. Like, like going to meetings and like trying to share the best thing that I could even think about. And then going home and just living like a scumbag.
I remember going to meetings up there and having something prepared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would write notes.
Like the Saturday Night Clubhouse, the beginner one.
Yeah.
Like that was my home group, of course. You know what I mean? And dude, I was sick up there. I was chasing girls. I was trying to, make money. Like I wasn't trying to stay sober. And similar to you, it was, I just had a cycle of 60 days sober, get high, go back, 60 days sober, get high, go back over and over again for probably 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'll always say, I mean, I feel like Levittown sometimes gets a bad rep, but like, dude, that place got me sober.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there was some really good people up there. I mean, I met some really good guys, girls that, I'm still friends with today that are still sober today. And, it's unfortunate because I think sometimes the cycle of recovery houses up there, it gets that bad reputation, but I think it's a great place to get sober.
Really, it's anywhere, right? Like when people talk about like, I'm not doing sober living, I'm not going back to a recovery house. It's like, okay, well, like walk me through how you're going to do this on your own, dude. Because like, if it's up to me, like I'm going to tell you everything in the book of how I'm going to stay sober. Right. But for some reason, my actions never, dictate that being the truth. I don't have the power to stay sober unless I like do this the correct way. And for me, it was going back to a top bunk, and like, I hated it. I did it against my will. Like I was like cursing everybody out the entire time in my own head, but it saved my life.
Yeah, I needed that structure in my life too. You know what I mean? The whole make your bed thing, your bed gets thrown on the roof. You know what I mean? Like,
That was a different house, brother. We weren't doing all that.
Nah, all right, maybe
But no, I mean, your mattress was getting flipped, but like, yeah.
I had my mattress end up on the roof. You know what I mean? Of
That's
gooseneck.
legit.
So, the chore each night, right? Clean the kitchen. You got to go to a meeting each day. I remember being on blackout, right? I'm 20 years old and I'm like, got to be in at 9 o'clock during the week. You know what I mean? And 11 o'clock on weekends. And I think I had bad intentions up there for a long time about basically I didn't want to get sober, right? I was just doing it to kind of, stay around, fit in, right? But mainly I was, spending, I was still working caddying, but I was like spending all my money on clothes, you know what I mean? And like look good and that sort of stuff. But like inside I was not working on myself at all, I was still doing that thing where I'm hiding it from people, right? And I'm trying to portray somebody that I'm not. But I think Levittown, I mean, I lived in probably, what house were you in?
Independence Lodge. So I was in the Croydon house.
Okay.
So like worse than Levittown. You know what I mean? I was in Croydon. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I mean, and it was like one of those like very structured houses, right? Where it was like, like you weren't, like people got asked to leave even if they were paying rent or, or whatever the case was, and like, and not getting high, right? Like if you weren't doing your tour, if you weren't like working like with a sponsor to a certain extent, like you just weren't a fit, right? So for someone like me and manipulates, right? Like I can do that too and not work a goddamn step, right? And like maybe like hindsight's 2020, I definitely worked some steps, but I wasn't trying to have like any type of experience with it. I wasn't trying to do like anything behind closed doors. I was just like yesing people to death, right? So I could stay in the house and like essentially by like not putting a drink or a drug in me for like 10 months, my life got really good. And then I went back home and I relapsed shortly thereafter, and then, there's a whole nother story behind that. But
yeah, I was up there for a while. Like, dude, I was getting high and hiding it.
Yeah.
Like I lived in a house for, 3-4 weeks getting high and I was able to hide it. I was never home. I worked 2 jobs, you know what I mean? And I'd show up to meetings, I'd get high, but somehow I was able to, and maybe people knew, maybe they didn't, I don't know. But I think that cycle continued for a while. Eventually I was out on the street, and a friend that used to be a house manager, really I was getting high with a kid I lived with. We got kicked out of the house. We were, ripping and running and stuff. And this kid that I was friends with, that used to be a house manager and moved into an apartment already at a few years sober. And I don't know why, but he let us come live with him. And like, I don't know the reason. Maybe he didn't want us to die out there. Maybe he felt safer, like having us closer to him, right? I think we were only there for maybe, I don't know, 3-4 weeks, getting high. We're going into my parents' house and they're at home stealing shit, right? Like we're figuring out ways to get high. And he eventually, I came back from work one day and I see a Malvern van picking him up. And I'm like, dude, this dude's
from the apartment.
Yeah. And I was like, my friend's going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I didn't have insurance at the time. Like my dad had retired. I was off the policy, that sort of stuff. And so he left. I probably lasted maybe 2 days. And then I was like, I don't know what happened, but I just remember I woke up one day and like I didn't have that feeling of like I want to kill myself. You know what I mean? I didn't still felt like shit, obviously, but for some reason I felt like I'm done. Like I'm done with this cycle. I'm done with this life. Like I need to get sober. That is my only way out of this. I probably took a couple subs, but I basically cold turkeyed on a couch.
Yeah.
Didn't go to treatment to get sober. I just did it on the couch. I called a friend that was still managing the recovery houses that I used to live at. He let me come stay at a house. And I just detoxed on a couch. And I'll never forget this. Like I was probably 4 or 5 days into withdrawal. Like I'm hurting, and his whole thing was like, hey, I'll let you come stay without a clean urine, but you need to pay rent at the end of the week. So I had to go caddy on a golf course.
Oh my God.
In May. It's like 90 degrees out.
Trying to not shit yourself the entire time.
That's what happened, right? Like for 4 hours, I get done and I'm like, I can't believe I just did this. You know what I mean? I get done. These golfers pay me $140, rent's $150. And I like know this dude. He's like, he's not going to care. Like you need the $150.
Yeah.
So I had to go back out again, 90 degree heat, make another $140, $150, and then I could pay rent. But dude, I was dead. Like I was hurting so bad, in full blown withdrawal, got done that day, but for some reason I still don't have a desire to go use.
Yeah.
Like I was just so done with like that life and that cycle, and I've been sober since that day.
And when was that?
May 19th, 2016.
Yeah.
8 years.
It's wild, right?
I got sober at 21.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I can't imagine. I meet people that like were using or drinking till, 30, 35, 40. I mean, for our jobs, I'm putting people in treatment when they're 60 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, dude, I couldn't last. I maybe had 3, like, I would say good, but really bad years, and I was done,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think maybe, and like your story probably aligns with mine in the sense that like I was shot from a very early time. You know what I mean? Like shot out of a cannon. And like I was lying about it for the most part, but like I'm sure LaSalle knew. They just weren't saying anything because they probably didn't, especially back then in like the early, 2007, 8, 9, 10. Like they didn't know how to approach something like that.
No.
They were like, we can't bring that up. God forbid we're wrong. Right now we're making an accusation. Like they didn't know how to have that conversation. I actually remember Roman, like, saying that, right? And they were like, listen, either you're going to tell your mom what you're doing, not to like throw a bunch of stuff out there, but like I had a guest, his name's Jake the Barber. We got caught up in school. But
Another Roman kid.
yeah, another Roman kid. But yeah, we got caught up, right? And like they called me in and they were like, hey, like we know what you're doing. Either you're going to tell your mom or like we're going to have to, have a conversation with her. Regardless, even if I did tell her, we were having a conversation. So like I went home, spun the entire thing. Told her that I was taking opiates, told her I was taking these perks because I had a bad knee that I had to get surgery on. I think I actually just told my mom this the other day, but like I never injured my knee.
He's perfectly fine.
I went through surgery. I never injured my knee. But regardless, right? Like they didn't know. So like when I came in and I had my mom there and she was like, well, yeah, he told me what he's doing. And she said that you can drug test him too. And there's nothing else that's going to come up in there. Just Percocet because he's in pain.
Bad knee.
I got a bad knee and I had to play varsity soccer. And it's like that's the shit. Like wild stuff. Like why? Like I went through a surgery. I never even hurt my knee. Went down to Novacare. I got out of surgery. They were like, "Yep, we had to shave your meniscus a little bit. It was torn." I was like, "No, you didn't.
You guys did nothing."
Yeah. But yeah. So it's like from an early age, dude. Like I was like, I needed to get sober like sophomore, junior year, right? Like I made it 1 year out of like not even. And I was already in treatment. Fast forward 3 years later, I got sober, God willing, and I'll never have to get sober again. But you brought up a good point with like, you're at 8 years, I'm coming up on 10, and it's like, I see these guys, right? And it's like, we're no different from them, but like, that are like, that we got sober with, that are like coming now back around.
Yep.
Which is fucking scary, dude. It's like really, really scary. Because like, some of them have built lives, have had children, have gotten married, right? And it's like either that's crumbling to the ground or it's in the midst of crumbling to the ground. And it's like, it's my biggest fear.
I tell my girlfriend that all the time. I mean, she's not in recovery. But I always tell her, I'm like, it would be a bad day for you if like something,
she's got no clue.
God forbid something, I'm a completely different person. You know what I mean? But yeah, I got sober young, and I mean, at 21, almost like basically turning 22 is when I got sober, and I can't imagine spending another day and like in the pain that I was feeling. And I think that's like, for me, everyone's story is different, right? Like, hey, I did some things, I ran around a little bit. I'm sure there's some people that had it way harder than I did, you know what I mean? But like, I know the pain that I felt inside, right? Like, I knew that like, the times I thought about killing myself, you know what I mean? Almost daily. Like there was days I just didn't want to wake up, or I didn't want to go to sleep, or I wished I was going to sleep and didn't wake up, like those were, I don't ever want to feel the things that I felt out there again. And the good news is you don't have to, you know what I mean? You can do some things. And
yeah, I mean, it's really simple stuff that we need to do. Right. And it's like, recovery looks different for every single person out here. Right. Especially in this day and age with like the MAT and like all that stuff, right? And like we've lost so many goddamn friends. Like I don't have an opinion on it one way or another anymore. But like recovery can look different for everybody. And I think I saw like some TikTok or something the other day, and it was like this guy talking about like some prescriptions that he's on. some stuff that like within a 12-step fellowship, people would be like, you know, you're not sober, you're Cali, so whatever. Like people would have something to say. And it was like, dude, at the end of the day, this guy was saying, like, I'm not burning my life to the ground. I don't have a needle in my arm. I'm not stealing everything and anything in my house.
Yep.
Right. And I'm able to like have a loving family, and I've built a life for myself. So like, you can say whatever you want, but I identify as I'm in recovery and like I'm doing okay. And I feel like we need more of that, right? Because like I remember when like the MAT first came around, dude, it was like
I was against it.
I mean, well, I was also on it, so like I was a little biased. And when I came off of it, it really, really sucked. But like I also wasn't going through counseling, right? I was like, it was literally like I pay cash. They take my urine, they read it, they see that I fail multiple different things. They're like, okay, here's your script, even though that I was not supposed to fail anything. And it was just like a month over month cycle. Where it was just like, it was another way to kind of enable me to like live the way that I was living. But like now it's completely different. Like it's, you know, like you need to be in programming, you need to like have counseling. And at the end of the day, man, like there's probably like 2 or 3 people that I know that like would still be here if they were on or open to doing MAT.
Dude, I think as long as you don't have a needle in your arm, you know what I mean? You're not stealing, like you said, and that sort of stuff, and like you're trying to better yourself in some sort of way, and you're trying to be a productive member of society, like more power to you. You know what I mean? Like whatever works. I know for me, that wasn't a path that I took. You know, detoxing cold turkey on a couch worked for me, you know, and like I went to treatment. In that cycle of like, you know, staying sober for 30 days, 60 days, and getting high, I probably went to treatment, I don't know, 7 or 8 times, you know what I mean? And I stayed, like, you know, I thought treatment was always great, and I have nothing against it. I work for a treatment center, you know, and I think it's the right thing, but I just know the path for me getting sober wasn't that, you know?
It's almost like when the pain's great enough, right?
Yeah.
It's like we don't give that enough credit. Like when the pain's great enough, like we're going to do 2 things. We're either going to go seek relief, or we're going to seek relief the other way, which is usually looks like it's a much harder option, but usually the payoff is much greater. And it's usually getting sober. But you talked about like you were working for a treatment center regardless, right? But like talk me through that, because I think what I find like where I'm most envious, I don't even know if that's the right word to say, maybe where I don't know, most proud. But like, I don't think like me being proud of you does anything for you. I don't know the word that I'm looking for, but
I don't know either.
Just know that it's genuine. Know that. Like walk me through how you have gone through, like started at a company, right? And really self-taught, and found out a way to somehow become like a very hard-nosed, good employee, good leader, you know, essentially that like wants the best for everybody, right? Cause like, that's like super, you know, admirable, where not everybody has that.
Yeah, I was still living in the recovery house after I got sober. My Aunt Katie worked for a place, and you know, it's my dad's brother, or my dad's sister, sorry. And she was, and I guess my dad was talking to her like, hey, you need to get him a real job. He can't keep doing the caddying and tiling thing and the construction thing, right? Like, get him a real job. He needs health insurance. My dad was big on that, right? Like, so my aunt kind of said, hey, get a year sober, and like maybe I can do something for him, right? I think I had 9 months, and I'm like, listen, close enough, right? Like,
the time's now, Aunt Katie.
Time's now. So, you know, I'm such a piece of shit still at this point that like I think going into an interview for like a company that my aunt works for, that like I automatically have the job. And I go to this interview and like I completely bombed it, right? I never interviewed for a place in my life. Like I said, I was more of a manual labor kind of person my entire life. So I bombed this interview, and some people think the story's like made up, but it's not. The person went to my aunt and was like, hey, is this kid, like, do we really need to hire him? Like, I know he's your nephew, but like, he ain't good, you know? Like, his resume sucks. He doesn't have, like, he was bad. He cursed in the interview, you know what I mean? All sort of stuff. And my aunt was like, listen, give him a chance. Like, I know his dad, he'll figure it out. Like, just give him a chance. And this place took a chance on me, and I'm always grateful for that, right? Like, I believe, you know, part of my sobriety is like people have helped me along the way. Like, I did not do this myself, right? Like, I've had multiple people throughout my life and in my story, I guess you could call it, that have helped me get to the place I am today. But, you know, I started at this place. I was on the phones, I was taking calls, and, you know, it was an experience for me in the beginning, right? I mean, I know Kel was working there too, right? But like talking to people over the phone, it just kept reminding me of like me making those same phone calls, right? And for whatever reason, I was pretty good at it, I had some really good people around me that, taught me different things that, I was able to learn. And kind of going back to like high school, I did really well in school, but I didn't apply myself. I remember saying that. And like now I finally found something I love and I'm applying myself, right? So it's like, I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy, you know what I mean? It's just
I've seen your spreadsheets, brother. Yeah.
I just need to apply myself, right, to like something I really love doing. And things kind of took off and, I was able to progress through, different opportunities at this company. And I moved up to, like a mid-level manager, moved up to a, manager, supervisor, now in a director position, still moving forward, right? Like I have, today, I mean, it's been 7.5 years at the same company. And like, I was talking to somebody the other day about this and I was like, that's something I'm really proud of. You know what I mean? Like, number one, I'm grateful for this place. They've given me a life, right? They've given me everything I could ever dream of right now, right? But I'm also very proud that I'm able to kind of like show up and be reliable and be accountable and be responsible.
Yep.
I have a team of, almost 45 people under me, right? And I'm responsible for all, at least I feel like I am, it's part of my job. And, I believe I've had really good, mentors and leaders just around me that have, coached me, developed me, trained me. But I also know like I've worked my ass off, right? And like I do believe, and I'll give my dad all the credit in the world. Like my dad was very successful in his job. I used to see him, dude, he'd wake up at like 3:30, 4 in the morning, go for a 5-mile run, come back, shower, leave at 5 a.m. He used to drive to White Plains, New York, which is past New York City.
Whoa.
Get home daily, every day.
Okay.
Get home at like 8 o'clock at night.
So he was leaving at 5. He wasn't getting to work until at least 8, well,
a little
7.
bit earlier.
Yeah.
And then come back 8:30 at night, eat dinner real quick, go to bed. Right. Yeah. And like he busted his ass. I think he taught, myself and my siblings like strong work ethic. Growing up, it's like, you want the pair of shoes, like, buddy, go get a job and pay for it. You know what I mean? Like you want the new Xbox, pay for it yourself. Like my parents gave me everything that I needed, but things that I wanted, I had to pay for. So, I credit a lot of my success to my dad, my mom, just for instilling that work in me. But dude, I spent hours and hours like on the side, outside of work, not getting paid, just like working on my craft and working on what I do and working on my skills. And like, I always tell people that are like, just starting and, they're motivated, they're driven, they have all that stuff. Like I always tell them you're going to get farther doing stuff outside of these 4 walls in this 8 hours than you will inside. So I did a lot of that, over the last 7.5 years. And I've gotten to a place where, not to boost my ego, but I like to think I'm pretty good at it, and it's afforded me a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, you're definitely good at it because I know that there's been maybe like once in my career where it's like, I was right on something and you were wrong, even though you chirped me. And I'm like, yeah, I got him. I'm on the side texting like, yeah, Dillon, take that. But no, you're absolutely good at it. Right. And I feel like you're always working, right? Even when you're home, like I know you're home and I'm like, this dude's still answering emails. Which really speaks volumes too on just like, the place that we work for. And like, that's a whole different conversation on like how we're trying to like, just make sure that we're answering in a timely manner. But much like yourself, right? Katie played a huge part in my career too.
Dude, she's helped a lot of people. I mean,
I don't think she really realizes how many people she's helped.
She doesn't.
I mean, even if we just look at like the people that she directly helped, think about like the loved ones of them and their family members of like, who directly kind of reap the benefits of like her giving somebody a shot.
Yep.
I remember sitting at like a job fair, right? And like, her, showing up and she told me to get there, I got there and, thank God I didn't know who I was sitting in front of, right? Because much like, I don't know if I bombed it or not, but I was sitting in front of, at the time, the CEO of our one location in Maryland, right? And, I thought I was just talking to some regular, some woman that, whatever.
Hit him with the Levittown Chris.
Yeah, they were like, well, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't really know. This woman, Katie, told me to show up and, but like, yeah, and like that kind of like was the start of like, you know, again, what, yeah, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Unlike yourself, I left a few times, came back.
It's all right.
But regardless, man, like your Aunt Katie has played like an integral part in my life. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's crazy too, and I know she was on here, and I think she had mentioned it, but like my grandfather, her dad, passed away with 30 plus years sober, and he was huge in AA and helped probably hundreds, if not thousands, just like her, right? And I always go back to we always laugh about it. I didn't know he was sober my entire life. I mean, he passed away maybe, I don't know, I was probably 14, 15. I was, in high school. I didn't know he was sober. I had no idea until his funeral. I'm standing at his funeral. I'm high at his funeral, by the way, right? And, we're in the viewing, and dude, there was a line, like, I can't even describe how long this line was, but it was just nonstop people coming through and being like, hey, I met your grandfather 2 days ago. He saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, your grandfather was incredibly, helped me so much, right? Like, sorry for your loss. And at the end, we're in the car on the way home with my family, and I'm like, what the fuck were those people talking about? Like, doesn't make sense. And they're like, he's sober. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. Like, why do you think he only drinks Diet Coke at every family gathering? You know what I mean? Why do you think he dips out around 7, 8 o'clock every family? He's going to an AA meeting.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about AA, NA.
That should have been the red flag. Like, oh shit, I guess I got it.
And I didn't know Katie was sober either. You know what I mean? Like, in my family, we're Irish Catholic, right? It's a big family. My dad's one of 6. Everyone has kids, and I have a lot of cousins, and I guess those are things we just don't talk about, right? But there's a picture, and it's on my desk at work, and it's like my favorite picture because I didn't know my grandfather as well as I probably could have, right? And I wish like I had built that connection with him when I was younger, but again, I didn't care about those things at the time. But there's a picture on this picnic table outside my parents' house. It was maybe my birthday, somebody else's, but it's my grandfather, me, and Katie at the picnic table, and I'm like 3 years old.
Yeah,
and it's like 3 alcoholics sitting at a picnic table, like hanging out.
That's
like
awesome.
Who would have thought? You know, like, but yeah, I mean, I think again, she has played like such an important role in my life, and it's to me like the greatest thing to be able to have not only somebody that I work with, but like somebody that's family, that doesn't judge me, I can be vulnerable with. She understands what I'm going through, and it's such an important thing to have, at least for me. And like I'm sure everybody has some version of that, with a friend or a family member, but I wouldn't be sober without her. You know what I mean? And multiple other people, by the way, right? Like getting sober is not an easy thing to do. And that's why, for me and my job, I mean, I don't substitute, program for job and all that sort of stuff, but I like getting people in a treatment and starting that path, right? And getting them to the door and getting them, begin the recovery journey. And it's great to see like people, when I'm over at a facility sometimes, to see people like walk out of that door and hug their family, right? And like you can see the change when they put on pounds, you know what I mean? They're looking better, they're feeling better, and like going back, I don't want anyone to feel the pain that I ever felt. And like that's a huge piece of like why I do what I do, why I work so much, why I'm always available 24/7, just like you are, right? Like your phone rings, you pick up, and it's because we don't want to miss that phone call, right? Like,
I mean, I remember when I was calling people, you know what I mean? And people, and I've been on the other side so many times where people are like, sure you have too, right? Where like the thank yous are just like endless. And it's like, really like no thank you needed.
Yeah.
Like seriously. Because like somebody did it for me, you know what I mean? And like, if that means that I'm going to like take your call and follow up with you at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, like it is what it is. Like we have to strike while the iron's hot. I know that when I was ready to go to treatment, I was ready then. Like, give me 25 minutes to like spin something together, and I'm not ready anymore. So yeah, I mean, it's like, people are like, oh, and not to bother you, like the whole nine. It's like, you're not a bother. Like, we're here whenever you need us.
Yeah. And I think, we definitely talked about a lot of good. I think, sobriety has its ups and downs, right? Just like life. And, I think the biggest thing that like I was taught was, to remain sober in like some of the bad times, right? And, life shows up, it's unpredictable. things happen. And, a few years ago, one of the hardest days of my sobriety and my life was, I was living with a friend. I was living with Mike and another friend. And, I was working all morning. It was during COVID. We were just locked down in the apartment,
Yep.
and, I'm working all morning and, this kid is, I don't know, probably 3 years sober, like doing well, moving up, everything looking good. Right. Like great kid, and I was definitely mentoring him a lot to try and get him into new positions, but like just an overall great kid, always doing the right thing. And I'm working in the morning. We had another friend that came over to drop cheesesteaks off. And he was like, "Yo, where's Joe?" He didn't answer his phone all day, and I'm like, "Oh, he's probably in his room sleeping. I have no idea, He opens the door and he was like, "Dude," and I'm like, "What?" And like I heard like the crack in his voice,
Yeah,
and I'm like, "It doesn't sound good," So I went over, I found my best friend, roommate, coworker, right? Like in his room, dead, and I'll never forget that image, right? Like, I don't need to talk about it, but it wasn't like he was just laying in his bed, like it was a bad scene. And, I felt him. He was cold, like purple. I knew he was gone. Called 911. And this is like the great thing of talking about like people helping, like the first phone call I made, and I don't know why, but I called my boss and I was like, "Yo, like I'm not going to be on that meeting in 3 minutes because Joe's dead." And he was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Joe's dead. Like I just found him in his room. He's dead." And my boss, great guy, but and I owe like everything to him. He was like, "Text me your address. I'll come down right now."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What boss do you have that's going to be able to do that?" Like that was like, I didn't think about it at the time because obviously there's so much going on. But like for him to just like, that was his response and nothing else. Right. And like, he came down. I called Katie. She came. My mom came a little bit later. Another friend of ours that we worked with came. Right. And I remember me and my friend Sam were sitting on the wall outside of our apartment or my apartment, and we're not talking. Like we just saw like the worst of the worst, right? And just lost somebody that was like really special to us. And my boss came and he just sat down next to us. He didn't say anything. Like,
yeah.
And I always remember, like thinking about it now, he just showed up, same with Katie, to like, hey, if we wanted to talk, they're there to listen, but at least they're there, and that was it. And dude, it was a tough day. And like, I'm not an emotional person. And I was, again, going through so much that day that when I finally got back to my apartment just to grab some things, I was like, "Oh, I can't stay there right now,"
Yeah.
I said bye to my mom, dude. I broke down. Like I cried for 5 minutes in my mom's arm. Like I was hurting. That was a big loss. And like going back to, things are going to happen in sobriety. Right. And like, you got to find ways to go through them. But I'm such a big believer in like, showing up for people, because that's what they did for me. Right. Like I didn't have a thought of using that day, but just the action of somebody showing up and being like, "Hey, like we care about you, like you're worth it, and like we're here for you if you need us." And like when you're getting high, you don't feel any of that, right? It's all guilt, it's all shame, it's all, "I'm a piece of shit," right? Like, and that day, I'll always remember that day. It was a horrible day, but I also like, maybe I'm an optimistic person, but I try to look at some of the good, right? And like those were some of the good things, is like people around me showing up.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, obviously it was not there that day. I remember hearing, the news, and not believing it. I was like, "What do you mean? Like, there's no, like, what? Dude's crushing life. What are you talking about?"
Dude, great.
But like my second thought was like we work for like a place that's going to be able to help us. Right. And that's how deep this thing runs. Right. And like, that's like, when people want to talk about like, "Oh, it's a choice," it's like, and it's this, it's that, it's, if he didn't want to live that way, he wouldn't, or it's like, like just say no, or whatever the case may be. It's like, that's how deep this thing is. Right. Like my man was the phone, was the place that you need to call. Right. Like he worked there. All he had to do was, but it's like, it's never that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing it. I was like, Jesus Christ, you, Mike, Sam as well. Like, I was like, I can't imagine what those guys are going through right now.
And what's crazy too is like, now when I think back on it, I was with him in the living room the night before. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, he's worked nights, I worked days. So like, we're just chatting it up. I'm watching TV. Like,
And
everything.
you didn't think anything, right? Like, you would have, I mean, you would have
Dude,
known, dude.
You know, living in the recovery house, when somebody walks in,
Mhm.
you tell immediately, like,
You're like,
that
you're
dude's
crippled.
high. So,
Yeah, you're crippled.
You know immediately.
Yep.
You know, like, I'm good at spotting when
Mhm.
things are off. You know, and like, I can tell with an honest heart, like 100%. He didn't get high when I was there. You know what I mean? And it must have happened at some point over that night. But the craziest part is, you know, the last text I have from him at 11 o'clock is like something along the lines of like, you know, put like 60 in today, you know, that sort of thing. So it's like he was helping people at like the last moments of his life, you know,
Yeah.
which is like crazy to me. And then what scares me to death is he went to, you know, after talking to his family and, you know, we went up there and saw them and, you know, I couldn't imagine, right? Like what they were going through too. But he was from Patterson and he took $20. They looked at his bank account. He took out $20 of cash. And then the police, and they did the autopsy, they found cocaine and fentanyl. So it's like, he's a smart dude too. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, maybe I'll just get high on coke because like that shit'll kill me, you know?
Yeah.
But it was laced. And that's what scares the hell out of me today. You know what I mean? Because like when I was getting high, it wasn't the shit that's going on out here.
No.
Like, bro, I'll drop dead immediately.
I mean,
you
we
know?
hear about it all the time with the college kids, right? Where
Yeah.
they're like, you know, oh, they're just doing coke. And it's like, no, you're not. And they're like, well, I'm testing it. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
No, you're not, dude. It's in everything. It's
Yeah.
wild.
So that one thing, and there was no needle or nothing. Like he snorted it, took him out, right? Like at some point over that night, which it's just, and the part that like, you know, he was in, because Joe, I mean, like I love him, but like he was too afraid to go down the way and like cop something. He was going to do it up where he like knows the area in Patterson. So like he was probably sitting on that, I think, when they looked at his bank account, like 3-4 days.
Jeez. Yeah.
So like, imagine those 3-4 days, you know, you got this thing on you, you know, like I couldn't imagine what he was going through, but again, everything on the out, like he was good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything seemed fine. And out of nowhere, it's like, that's how quick this can change, you know, like at the drop of a dime, my whole life could change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 8 years.
Gone.
You know what I mean?
Dude, immediately.
If we're lucky. Right? If we're lucky. Right. And Joe's like a testament to that, where it could be like, you know, if I, God forbid, were to pick up 10 years, gone in an instant, or I die.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it was 10 years ago, which is the scariest part.
Yeah.
Because I know that even if, God forbid, I were to get to that point, that fear of like death wouldn't stop me, you know?
No.
So enough of the dark stuff, right? Joe was the fucking man.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
He was a great dude. And shout out Frisbee, man. Like, you want to talk about like having a great boss. Like I mean, dude, he always blows my mind. Like when I hear him speak.
Yeah.
You know, so he's a rock star. I know that we've been going for a good bit. I don't know what the time is. We're right around that time. I've been asking everybody. I'm going to ask you too. What's the future look like, right? Like, what is like continuing to turn like all of that shit that you went through at LaSalle and like shortly thereafter and early into like Levittown and, you know, every 30, 60, 90 days, like, you know, just getting high and living on the couch or, you know, getting high and calling Aunt Katie and like being like, hey, can I crash on the couch a couple days? And then to like segue into like, you know, the current, like how do we continue to turn that pain like into that purpose? What's the next 5 years looks like? What is the purpose in life?
It's so funny because I ask, you know, people that report to me all the time, like, hey, you know, what do you want to do over the next 1 to 3 years, 1 to 5 years, right? And nobody ever knows. And it's funny, I don't even know either, you know. I know that today, dude, I keep life really, really simple. Like, I'm more of a homebody kind of person. My friends make fun of me for that. I don't go out
Big
much.
cat guy.
Yeah, I got a cat, you know what I mean? Like, I play
Yeah.
video games, I golf,
Mhm.
like, I hang out with family and friends here, and that's it. Like, I keep things really, really simple. And, you know, when you talk about gifts of sobriety, right? Like, I have things today, I have good relationships today, all that sort of stuff. The thing that, like, I truly love is up here is quiet. Like, there's not that whole kind of cycle and voice in my head at all times. I'm very, very quiet and I'm just content, you know? I'm able to sit at my house by myself if my girlfriend's not there, and I'm good.
Yeah.
Like there's no thoughts and stuff happening up there anymore. And it's taken a long time to get there, but like I love that quiet place. You know what I mean? And like how quiet it is in my head. So as far as, you know, where things go, dude, I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, you know. I know we talk about it and, you know, sometimes it sounds corny, but it's a day at a time, right? Like I don't look toward the future. I just try and keep going through life, content, happy. I try to deal with things and they show up the best I possibly can. I try to enjoy the good times the best I possibly can. You know, my sister just had a baby.
Love that.
She told me that, you know, I'm a godfather now, which I don't know if godfathers are a big deal, but for me,
They kind of are.
Dude, it meant the world to me.
Mhm.
Like, and I don't know if I even told her that, but like, dude, I got emotional when she asked. Like, I thought that was like the coolest thing. Cause I'm like, you trust me, you know what I mean? Of all people, like after what the shit that I've done in my life, you know? But he's great. So I'm really happy about that. Yeah, I just want to keep trying my best each day.
That's all we can do, right? Even on the bad days, especially when work gets crazy, when family gets crazy, when like, you know, even like with that whole contentness piece, right? And like you're feeling like what else is out there, right? We just show up, you know, and do our best and call it a day. And, you know, turns out if I try to live by spiritual principles, like it all seems to work out. So with that, before we shut it down, is there anything else you want to say? Other than the fact that what I'm going to say is, remember the picture, the notorious picture?
Which picture?
Your picture.
What, the one of me?
Yeah. I'm putting that up.
Are you?
Yeah. This way there's no doubt in anybody's mind.
You know, it's funny about that picture, and we talked about it. That was at Penn State.
You were up at Penn State like that?
That's how I looked at Penn State, dude. That's what I'm saying. I was like,
Dude,
I didn't have teeth.
I thought you were like in Orland.
No teeth. I was like pale as you could possibly be. I was wearing a Carmelo Anthony alternate jersey. You know, like, dude,
I didn't know you were up at Penn State.
That was at Penn State. Yeah,
that's great.
Imagine me when I got home from Penn State. There are no pictures of that one, you know?
No. There's been times where I've been like trying to like look for old pictures of me, and it's just like I didn't take many because I was like in such a bad spot.
Dude, it's funny. I actually think about that when I go on like Facebook. They're just like gaps.
Yeah.
In my Facebook of like 2019 or 2014 to like 2016 of just like nothing. You know,
there's like high school, and then like a few years, like, you know, you might get like a couple here and there of like stuff that I'm tagged in.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's really not much.
Yeah. No, I have nothing else. I mean, I appreciate you having me. I told you before, I think, you know, I'm sure I rambled on and said some things, but like this podcast is great. I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's good just to talk about things, right? Talk about life, you know, get messages out there, you know, hopefully it can help somebody, right, if they hear it. But yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you coming out, dude. If you like what we had to say, right, and if you've listened this far along, give us a like on Instagram, Pain W Purpose. That's at Pain W Purpose. Instagram, Pain with a Purpose Podcast, and on YouTube, on Apple and Spotify, Pain with a Purpose Podcast. I'm gonna pre-record that and then just like let it roll, because like I can never get it right.
I feel like you'd have it down by the 17th episode.
No, but it's starting to get easier when I say like smash that like button. You know what I mean? So with that, we appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you.